it started pretty fast.
Okay. And takes us back to your growing up years. Like probably many basketball players, they always had the dream of going to college and then maybe playing professionally and stuff like that. And you got to live both those dreams. What was your thought? Growing up, when did you realize that you really could possibly play, college basketball and maybe even play professional basketball? What's the thought process there?
Well, my career initially started as a football player growing up, from Pop Warner. So that's where my focus was. Me and my dad was always a football player, a football family, and growing up, and it wasn't until later on, almost, later on in middle school, beginning of high school, where I took a liking to basketball, and once I took a liking to basketball, I practiced every day, um, and it just got better to a point where that was my sport of my chosen sport. So
Hmm.
I just gave it my all and ended up going to high school to play it, and made it my full time priority and job and goal is to get a college scholarship. So I put in tireless time in the gym and to get to a point where I was getting recruited a little bit out of high school, um, and when I went to junior college. So it wasn't always a basketball um, mindset for me. It switched a little bit right before I went to high school.
Mm. Hey, Coach, thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate. So you played college and professionally. How do you think those experiences has helped you coach your younger players? Because there are a lot of coaches out there that have never played and they really can't relate to their players, but you've actually played on the highest level. How do you think that's helped you interact with your players?
Oh, I think that's the number one thing. I think for me, with my style of play and how I played, I wasn't, McDonald's All American. I wasn't, top everything. I was a really, really, really good player at my position, and my whole goal was making everyone better. So my whole philosophy in playing is what I'm doing as a coach. So me being a player is the number one thing that really helps guide me into really helping the players become better. And also too, it's a credibility thing too. When the players know that you played, and when the players, kind of know that you're an athlete too, it's kind of easy for them to relate to you and kind of understand. So for me, I really get that. I really understand the athletes, and I think first I'm an athlete's player first, and then an actual coach second. So I kind of relate to them a little bit on that angle.
Uh, that's great. Yeah. Well, you know, what was it like though? When I know you had to sort of go the longer route, which
Mhm.
a lot of guys have to go to, of playing, junior college basketball first, and then having to go to, then you get to go to college, and then of course the pros. Nowadays a lot of these guys, they go to college for 1 year and they're in the pros somewhere,
Mhm.
and you had to go like the long route to get there. Do you think that those trials and tribulations? I know junior college is not the easiest. Do you think that really helped build your character into what you are today?
Yeah, for sure. I think I was going to junior college, and having those few years in junior college really, really provided a maturity for me. I think even helped me go when I went to Division One and get recruited. I was a little older, a little bit more mature, and knew what it took to kind of be on my own and survive the ups and downs of athletes fighting for scholarships. That's exactly what it is. It's you have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of athletes fighting for very few scholarships, and the junior college route is probably even more of a grind because you're playing against grown men. You're playing against grown
Mhm.
men, and it's double the amount of them. So it was a little bit different, but the grind of junior college was probably the toughest in my career, but it for sure molded the character and provided a sense of maturity that really, really, really helped me. And I think even today.
Right. Nice. Nice. So you played overseas, correct?
Yes.
How was that experience like? Cause young guy traveling outside the country, playing somewhere that you're not familiar with. What was that experience like for you?
Tough initially. I didn't know what to expect. I think in my last year of college, um, I decided to maybe sway my intentions of wanting to play the NBA. So obviously, the whole goal was to get to a point to play in the NBA or have an opportunity to play in the NBA when you're playing in college. Obviously, that didn't go as well as planned, but I had an opportunity to go play in a few different countries. The one I played the most in was in Lima, Peru. So initially, the atmosphere and the culture, it's a shock initially, but I think my path to getting there, I was a mature kid at the time. You know, I played high school. I had to do the grind in high school. I went to junior college. I did the grind in junior college. You know, I went to Division One. I did the grind in Division One. So I think I was mature enough to handle going over there and playing in the different culture and the professionalism that it took to continue to play out there. You know, obviously, not very many people can go out there and handle it and handle the politics and the professionalism of being a part of a professional organization other than a college organization. So I think I handled it well. I did really well in everywhere I played overseas, and I think that really kind of molded me to in my life to help other athletes do the same.
And now, you always, I mean, for, for our listeners out there, I actually have worked with Coach Bean off and on over the last 10 years in both the high school and the prep school ranks. And he is actually starting, he did it, Future College Prep based in Carson, California. He did that for 5 years. And then he had a little, like you always hear about women having a little break in their life because of kids. Well, Coach Bean took a few years off because his wife and him had two beautiful kids. His oldest daughter is named Zara, and she is like 7 now, Coach.
6. She'll be 7 in a couple months.
and then just before the pandemic hit, you had another bundle of joy named Legend Bean, which I love that name, Legend Bean. It's a lot to live up to, but yet it's a cool name. No weird to me, cool name, Legend. So I mean, but you think now that you're coming back into the coaching ranks and the prep school ranks, that what do you think that there's going to be a difference in your style of coaching? Maybe because, they say parenthood can sometimes change a person's personality a little bit. I mean, how do you think that's going to affect you, or do you think it's going to affect you at all when you get into the coaching ranks now again?
Well, I think it obviously you have to adjust in the times, and for me, the last months I've been doing just watching a lot of film and really catching up on basketball, and obviously within the last 2 seasons, basketball has been shut down or halted anyway since the pandemic. So I just pretty much been catching up on what's been going on the last couple of seasons with different players, different styles of play, different way people coaches, and I just think my style is obviously, as a person, I'm a little bit calmer and a little bit understanding because of kids. But I think my style is my style. I think obviously the different the mentality and the culture in the era of players have changed. So obviously that I would definitely have to change with that era. So I do think I have more of a calmness and an understanding now to develop the kids now. So I think, to answer your question, yes, I think I have to change a little bit my style for today's era, but also too, you as a coach, you have to change every year for the type of players you have. Mm-hmm. So I think this year will be different for me. I think I will be probably more of a teacher this year than an actual coach, because that's what I've been doing with my kids for the last couple of years. So just to answer your question, yeah, I think for sure I will have to change this year the way I've done things in the past, but still keeping the same elements that make me and make my program successful.
Mm-hmm. So you said that your kids and stuff have changed this area. What exactly has changed between this area of the basketball kids compared to when you played? What kind of styles have changed?
Well, I think for the obvious reason, I think there's a lot more talented kids now than there were when maybe even when I first started the prep, the post grad basketball. So I think there's a lot more talent and a lot more kids that are really fighting for it. And just doing, obviously, looking at a lot of kids, and it's crazy because I just went to a high school basketball game last night. The intensity is there, the drive is there, but I think it's the different type of work ethic that maybe a player will possess now than they would back in the day. A few years ago there were very little options for players. Now I think the options are opened up more now, and they have way more options, and they're open now to even exploring not even Division I, but Division II and NAIA, because everything is still college basketball. So I think there are more options now and more opportunities to be seen, obviously because of social media, way more opportunities to develop and get the training that they need to get to the next level.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's a word I remember I've heard you say it a few times, and I think most people like using the context to figure out sort of what it means. But I know in your coaching, you always challenge the players with it, talking about how how they're going to deal with it. Is that word, the grind, and you talk about how the grind works, and like, what does the grind exactly means? I know grinding sort of means like, oh, you got to work very hard and it's really tough, but what exactly is the grind like for players who are trying to get to the next level?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I don't think anyone has ever asked me to define the grind. No, I just think it's a mentality. I think first it's a mentality that every player has to have coming into whatever they decide to do. You can have a grind in your business. You can have a grind in your life for specific things. I think the basketball grind pretty much is understanding and knowing your end goal and doing any and everything that you can to obtain that, and not leaving anything to chance. I think whether it's a high school kid that that are striving for a college scholarship, you have to do everything different that you've done in the past to get that scholarship. You have to wake up earlier. You have to stay later. You have to put more reps in. You have to sacrifice cell phone. You have to sacrifice social media. You have to sacrifice all the things that I think that will hold you back from achieving your goals. So, and I think that's the grind. It's doing things a little bit different from what you've done in the past, and keeping that focus and that goal, that keeping your eyes set on the goal. And I think that's the grind, and it's going to be hard. There's going to be times you're going to quit or want to quit. There's going to be times where you want to give up, but the grind and your vision on your main goal at the end is what drives you. And I think that's more what the grind is.
Yeah. Now you, doing prep school, and especially a postgraduate prep school, there's a lot of high school prep schools out there all across the nation, and some really prestigious ones. You got Brewster Academy out there on the East Coast, and Oak Hill Academy, and you've had, and now I think we'll have again a program called Finley Prep, which is in Las Vegas, Nevada. They've always been known for getting a lot of athletes to the next level, and then eventually a lot of their athletes end up going to the pros. And Oak Hill Academy is definitely well known for that. But your program, and there are a few programs like that here on the West Coast, and there's a bunch, all over the place, is a postgraduate prep program. How is that different? And like, explain a little bit about the postgraduate prep program, how it works, and like that, and dealing with the NCAA and everything else.
Well, I don't think it works that differently, other than the student athletes that we get are already graduated high school. They're postgraduates. So what we do is the postgraduate program is mostly we take them and we try to enhance their academic and basketball standing. That's pretty much what we do. We try to enhance that the standing and get them more of a development for the next level.
And I mean, you've had some pretty good success. I mean, if you look at your website, it's really good. The website, say the website again for our listeners out there. What is it?
It's futurecollegeprep.com.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure it hadn't changed. So, futurecollegeprep.com, and I mean, you can see some of the things that Coach Bean has done, successes his program has had, and a big thing is almost 50 players have gone to the next level from his program, gone to college, out of the program, not just in Division I, which everybody wants to know. I mean, I think you've had about 22, 23 D1 players, but you've also had, a nice handful of D2, NAIA, and guys who had to go to junior college route usually because of academics still. And, but they went on and played it, at major colleges. So how is that, how does that process work? And what exactly do you do or try to do for players who come to your program?
Well, mainly it's the development, number one. And on the coaching side, for me, it's all about the marketing and the connections you're trying to do to get the coaches out to recruit your guys. And I think for me, it's a tireless effort to connect with college coaches and to let them know that, hey, we have players over here and they're getting the right development, they're getting the right coaching. And, we have players just as well as, the top ranked so-called schools have or programs have too. So I think throughout the years, we've built a great network of college coaches and a trust. It's a trust that college coaches know that coming to our program, the kids are going to be coached and they're going to be good kids and good options to be recruited for the next level. So I think our program starts obviously with the development and making sure every kid is is enhancing their resume to go to college, which is obviously academics and development basketball wise. But for us, it's the connections we have with the coaches and the trust that the coaches will know that our players are also just on the same level as any top player that they can be recruiting.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a coach, you've sent players to college and professionally. How does it make you feel knowing that your program is helping these kids reach their goal and move on to the next level?
Oh, that's the most satisfying thing. I think for me is we've done this without having top-ranked players, McDonald's All-Americans, just blue-collar, hard-hat players that want to get to the next level. So I think the most rewarding thing for us, obviously as a coaching staff, and now I can sit here and smile back when kids get scholarships, is they come from pretty much the ground up. Mm-hmm. They come from the ground up and come to our program and obtain the ultimate goal by working hard and starting from ground zero to get up. So for me, that's the most rewarding thing is to make sure that all of our kids have the opportunity and they're on the same playing level field as everyone that's ranked.
Yeah. And I mean, I know, like, when you get a kid who comes back and says, hey coach, I got my first pro contract in Italy or in Serbia or in, Peru or, whatever. What is that like when you hear that they've made it to that ultimate level of playing professionally?
Well, again, we still have players playing overseas now, and for me, I think I just follow their journey, and it just kind of obviously I'm happy for the kids. They came from pretty much ground zero, not being ranked, and going through the grind of prep school. Some going, getting to college and doing well in college and having an opportunity to play overseas, and literally all of them are doing well overseas that are playing. Having the opportunity to do that and make some money, play professionally, and really live out the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal of every athlete, is to play professional and make money doing this. I think that is a stamp on, number one, the kid, and two, on our program. I think our program has developed players, professionals from the ground up, and I think that's what we can hold our hat on. Is we're not taking all Americans that's already ranked. We're literally developing them from the ground up and seeing them mature to get to the next level, especially pros. And I still follow a lot of the players that are overseas and doing well, playing in different countries. So I think that is the most rewarding thing. And I think too that gives a stamp on our program. That's the biggest thing is a stamp on our program that, hey, we produce professional players as well.
Yeah. So, Coach, you went to prep school, but when did you realize that, what, I want to create a prep school to help these kids out? And kind of talk about the behind the scenes stuff, because there's a lot of people and a lot of work that you have to do in your group to make sure this prep school runs smoothly. So kind of talk about all the behind the scenes stuff and when you first realized that this is what you wanted to do.
Well, I think I wanted to do this because when I was coaching my last couple of seasons in high school, my whole goal is to take our high school and put it on the national stage. I think a local or regional stage really doesn't get the athletes the notoriety or the put them on an atmosphere on a platform with other top players. So when I started the high school coaching, my whole goal was to be a national high school team, not a local high school team. So I always strive to do that. So we wanted to play the biggest schools, the toughest schools, and maybe even schools outside of the state. So that was my goal. Even in high school, we traveled to Seattle to play some of the top schools in Seattle. Mm-hmm. So that was always my goal, and not very many schools back at that time did that. Now they do, because a lot of teams want to play a national schedule and get their kids more, national attention. So that's what I try to do. So that's why I decided to move from high school to a prep and post-grad, because now you can literally behind the scenes plan and schedule a whole program identical to a Division I. You can go to Division I practices. I've had Division I friends that pretty much gave me the blueprint of how they run their program, how they run their practices, and what they look for. And I just take that and emulate it, And behind the scenes, we try to schedule a national schedule. We try to we train just like a Division I team, so they they get that atmosphere of being a Division I or college athlete with the training and the travel schedule and the competition. So we're pretty much emulating the college grind, of being a college program. So that's pretty much behind the scenes of what we try to do. We try to emulate the Division I or college program.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of our viewers out there may not even know exactly many of the prep schools. I mean, Oak Hill Academy, people probably have heard of, because, like I said, they produced huge numbers of professional NBA players. I mean, Carmelo Anthony went there. He's one of the more recent ones. Vince Carter, a bunch of guys have gone there and played. And you not only got your school to be able to compete at that level, your program, and I mean, you played them. I mean, you went to Oak Hill and played a game at Oak Hill. You played IMG Academy, which a lot of people may have heard of in Florida, maybe more for football, but they have a pretty darn good basketball program as well. And playing Finley Prep is another one. Finley Prep, I know, may not be a household name, but you hear guys like DeAndre Ayton, the guy who played there. Anthony Betty, he was sort of a bust in the pros, but still a number one draft pick by the Cleveland Cavaliers years back. He played at Finley Prep. Finley Prep's always got guys who have gone very far, and they had something very special. They had a very strong home court advantage. I think at the time when you started playing them, they had won like 70 or 80 games in a row at home. And all of a sudden there was a game in December, I think of 2014, I believe it was, and you take your team up there to Findlay Prep and battled a very good Findlay Prep team, the crowd, and also referees, unfortunately. But anyway, and you guys at Future College Prep pulled off a major upset in beating them at their home gym on a buzzer beater, and you'd almost beat them earlier in the year. And Findlay Prep went on about 10 more years to not lose another home game. So you were the only team in like 15 years of Findlay Prep's program to beat them at their home gym. What was that like? And I know a lot of people may not know about how dominant they were, but what was that like to be able to do something like that and play out these national team? He's a really well-known nationally, and have guys going to the pros left and right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah. Again, that was the bar. At the time, Findlay Prep, that was the bar. That was the team that every year other teams recruited to play against. And that was our bar too. Our bar was, okay, we play Findlay Prep a couple times a year. They always have 2-3 lottery pick players every year. They always have 9, 10, 12 high Division I players every year. So that was our. And as okay, this is something that I want, to obtain, is to be at that level. So, and just going in there, and it's crazy because all of our coaching staff driving up to that game that day, it was just an atmosphere in the air that we knew this was our day. They've won like 107 games in a row at home without losing. They were undefeated in 15 years at home. They've never lost to any team on the West Coast ever in their whole existence. And driving up, I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday morning, we drove up really early. And it was something in the air at our pregame meal. We stopped. It was something in the air that was like, it was a seriousness that today is our day. And our guys just came out and performed. And we pulled up probably one of the biggest upsets in prep history is to defeat that team at home against all odds, with us not having one ranked player, and then they have potential lottery picks. So for us, it was just a preparation and a mentality from our players that we can compete at this level too, and obviously our coaching staff was gung ho because we knew we can play with them, and we knew we deserved to be on the court with them every game. So we prepared every single day to play them and to take them on. So it was, again, it was a great college basketball game. They always have been a powerhouse and always been a class act program. So we just wanted to go out there and compete again and let the chips fall where they may. And then that day it did.
Now, you always have these little, I always called them, when I was coaching with you, Beanisms. You had these little sayings that you always use. The word "the grind." You also talk about what's your brand. You challenge the guys, what's your brand? And you had a lot of other things, passing the eye test, with college coaches. These are just little things that you could say to the players. And I've heard them in my mind. Since I left working with you and started coaching myself in high school, the head coach, I would say some of these things to the players. When they say, "Oh, yeah, coach, I can play college ball," I'm like, "Well, you got to pass the eye test. You got to know what your brand is and things like that." Explain some of these words and these catchphrases that you use with the players, and what's your your meaning out of them is.
Well, I guess you catch me at different times where I'm just thinking, and whatever I'm thinking at the time, I'm blurting out, and then I say it to the players. But yeah, I think in today's game with so many different basketball players getting recruited, and so many college coaches not really out there as much, they're kind of they're relying on what they see or hear from other coaches. I think you have to create your brand. Your brand is what you stand for, what's your style of play, um, and you really have to stick to it. I think a lot of athletes, especially today, try to do very little of a lot of different things instead of doing one or two things very, very, very well to get them recruited to really hone in on their skill. I think in order to be recruited at the highest level and to have a successful career, you have to have a talent, a single talent. And that's what I always strive for every year to make sure our players have is they know their talent. It doesn't have to be four different talents. It doesn't have to be two different talents. You just have to have a talent, and you do that talent very, very, very well. And that's how you pass the eye test. If you're a shooter, if you have 10 shots, if you're consistently making 7 or 8 out of 10, you're a shooter. That's your talent. If you're an athlete, throughout the course of the game, you have to play athletic. You can't have 1 or 2 games where you're not athletic. That's your talent. If you have a high motor like Draymond Green, you have to always play with that high motor. You can't have games where don't have a motor, and that's your talent. And a lot of there's teams out there that need guys with motor. So again, that you have to define your brand and what you want your brand to be, and hone in on your talent, and really focus on obviously working on your other parts of your game. But you have to hone in on your talent and pass that eye test. I think when college coaches, when college coaches come in and they watch a player either in practice or a game, the number one thing they look at is, can they pass the eye test? Is he physically fit to play at college level? Can he think? Does he have a talent that will get him over the top, and down days? So I think that's the number one thing. If you have a talent that will always overcome just a regular basketball player that can do a little of a lot of things.
Yeah, well, and now, I mean, in prep school, there really isn't that much time in the postgraduate prep program. I mean, a high school athlete can go to a prep program and go to it for 2 or 3 years sometimes, depending on what year they leave and go to a prep school. But in postgraduate, I mean, it is 1 year, and really most prep programs are about 6 to 8 months at most. I mean, how do you change a guy from a player who was not recruited into a player that multiple colleges want a lot of times?
Well, again, I guess that's the challenge of any coach. How can you transform or develop a player into a college basketball player? I think it's one step at a time. I think the good thing about post-grad or prep compared to high school is the majority of time it's more basketball and more development. So I think they're getting double and sometimes triple the amount of development time during their fifth year than they would in high school. And I think a lot of the kids are even more serious. They know, hey, this is my last chance. So with that last chance, I think it's a different mindset that they have to get better. And also the kids are older. And when you get a little older, I think the development enhances faster than it would be at a younger stage. But what we try to do is we try to put them in an atmosphere where they're achieving their goal every single day. And for our program, what we try to do is we don't try to make sure, we don't try to develop nine different talents for a kid or skills. We try to hone in on 1 or 2 talents that they're really, really, really good at, and really highlight them and really have them enhance them. And that's what we do. And I think if they haven't been recruited in high school, just enhancing 1 or 2 skills for 6 months is for some of these kids, that's the all they needed was just a little bit more game film, a little bit more reps, shooting, a little, it may be an offense that gives them 3 or 5 more shots per game. Maybe playing against some of the top players more often than they did. I think it's just in prep school, it's just inches. All we're trying to do is provide those inches that the majority of those players needed in high school that they didn't get. and that's what we provide. Just those little inches that it takes to get that scholarship, and that's what we try to provide for them.
Now, less being the player. Let's go back, 3 years
Oh,
when you're playing, and you're a senior in high school, and you were really looking to get to the next level. And back then, there was a few prep programs, but really none on the West Coast and whatever. How do you think it would have? Do you think prep school would have benefited Les Bean rather than going to junior college more, or because basically prep school and junior college have been compared to as almost the same thing in some ways. I mean, the difference is when you go to prep school, you don't lose any eligibility.
right.
So you possibly go to prep school for a year and then still go to a 4-year school and play all 4 years. Whereas you go to junior college, when you play, you lose eligibility. So, would Les Bean have gone to a prep school back then?
I'm not sure if I would have went to a prep school. I think back then they were. I did hear about Oak Hill and a couple other prep schools, but it wasn't really popular on the West Coast, especially in California. So it wasn't really pushed when I was in high school. So I didn't have an option of 10 prep schools in California or even Southern California to go to, nor was my parent in a position to, put me there at that particular time. Obviously the last of 9 kids, the last thing I think my parent would want is, pay for a prep school thing. So I'm not sure if I would have went to a prep school. Obviously, if there was an Oak Hill in California, maybe. But I think right out of high school, I was getting recruited by some really, really, really tiny colleges in the back east, but I don't think I was ready to go out of high school. I think a junior college recruited me. I really liked what they were talking about, and I think the development that I needed to have to go to where I wanted to go, which is to play college basketball, was the junior college route at the time. And when I played junior college was the prep school scene. So you fast forward now, you have a separate prep and post grad, type of scene, and then it's a different junior college scene. When I played, everybody was went to JUCO. That was the number one thing in California is the JUCO. So now, obviously, you fast forward and it's everything now is the prep and the post grad, but the hot thing back then was JUCO, and everybody was playing JUCO. So I don't think I would have went to prep back at the time because the hottest thing was JUCO.
So, Coach, now we're back in your playing days. I gotta know your best game in your high school, college, or professional career. You dropped 40 or 50 on someone?
No, I wasn't the type that would drop 40 or 50. The crazy thing about it, and when I played overseas, you had to perform to continue to play and get contracts over there. So I will tell you a funny story. If anybody know me, I like to pass. I like to, I was a high flyer, so to speak, as a small guard. But my thing was, I like to get people involved. I'll hit 15 or 20 points and then try to get 20 assists and not get any more points. That's just the way I played. But when I played overseas, I was seeing a lot of players getting shipped home because they just wouldn't perform. So my whole goal over there was, man, you know what? I got to do well. I got to make them know that I belong over there. And there was a game I think we played against Venezuela or one of the teams when I played in Peru in South America, that I literally shot the ball 50 times. I literally had
be aggressive.
Yeah, I think I probably had about 48 points or something like that, and I had like 21 or 22 free throw attempts. But I think I probably had like 48 points at least, I think. But I shot the ball like 50 times, and that was completely out of my character. Like after the game, I was like, man, there's no way in the world I can continue to do this because that's not the type of player I am. I like to get people involved. So that probably is one of my biggest highlights overseas because I think after the game, I was like, man, I cannot play like this again. That was a good.
So it's kind of like football where if you're not performing, they can just cut you and get rid of you, send you packing.
Yeah, yeah. When I played over there during that time era, now granted I had a guaranteed contract, but a lot of other players that were coming over were on performance contracts. And although I was on a guaranteed contract, if I didn't perform, it was to a point where they can get rid of me too and bring another American in or bring someone else in too. It wasn't, it's overseas. What are you going to do? Try to get a lawyer and sue them?
Right, right.
Right. So back then it was more of, we're bringing you over here to make our team better and to make our team that one of the top teams. And you have to do that by any means necessary. So I did whatever I could every single game to make sure we were, number one, a very, very, very good team, because obviously even if I shoot the ball and score 40 points, that can't guarantee we win. So I did everything I can to make sure that our team was a top team. And I think that's why I had a little success over there. So,
and one thing, now in your prep program, I mean, you basically left no stone unturned. I mean, some prep programs, they just look for guys here from America, pretty much, or maybe even like the regional area. And I mean, you had guys from, at one time I know you had guys from like, Texas and Louisiana and Florida and Baltimore, Maryland, and Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, and then I mean that was just the in United States guys, and then you had guys from Serbia, Lithuania, Colombia, Australia. I mean, all over the place. And I mean, what was it like having to deal, especially with guys who were, most of them were away from home for their first time in their life? How did you deal with that? Because when they get to go to college, they sort of get homesick sometimes, and imagine they're doing it just after high school, and some of these kids are coming not just from out of their region, they're coming from out of the country. I mean, how did you deal with that, and what is that like? The international mentality.
Well, I first have to give it up to my staff. I think the staff was the number one reason that that really made the international kids and maybe the kids that are over out of the country, out of the state, made them feel comfortable. And I also think it was the atmosphere that our whole program provides. I think the atmosphere is a family atmosphere, a caring atmosphere, and I would say a blue collar atmosphere, meaning most of these players are blue collar workers. They want to work hard, and their whole career they had to work hard. They wasn't McDonald's All-Americans. And I think number one, it's a testament to their character and their grind and how much they really want it. But I think to really handle a program like the out-of-state program and international program was just a testament to everybody that worked with me, all my coaches. I don't even call them my coaches. I call them my partners and my brothers, because they always, let me know the heartbeat of the team and what we need to do and what we don't need to do. So I just think for me, I don't take full credit for that. I think you're only as weak as or strong as your weakest link. So what for me, I just think it's the people you put beside you to kind of really help run the program. So I think my coaches and the people that was with me did a great job in making sure the program, especially international, was comfortable.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead, Dave.
No, you go ahead.
No, so you've brought up the blue collar. Do you prefer working with the blue collar athletes, the athletes that are underlooked, that they are pushing to get to the next level, or the All-American guy who got all the recognition? Which one do you prefer as coaches to work with? The guy that's big-headed, the guy who's pushing to get to the next level?
Well, I think I had a little bit of both. I think I'm not sure if we had the McDonald's All-American before, a kid that everyone wanted. But I think we had some pretty close players. I just think to go back to one of your first questions that you asked is just what type of player, what type of coach am I, or what type of player was I? So I think for me, I was a hard-nosed blue-collar player So of course I love the hard-nosed blue-collar players to coach. I think those are the more rewarding people to coach because they have a mentality that I want to get to that point. And so they just have a different type of mindset and work ethic. Um, Obviously, every coach wants to coach a McDonald's All-American. You know, I definitely want to inherit a Los Angeles Lakers team with Shaq and Kobe. You know, so you know, everyone wants to. Every coach, obviously, it's fun coaching an NBA talent or a high major talent. Obviously, it's it makes the rest of the players better when they know they have that type of player around them for sure.
Yeah.
But for me, I've coached at different level players. I think we've had some international players was just as good and just as talented as some of the players that went in the NBA draft. So I personally think a lot of the players, for me, are all Americans in certain angles. So, but for me, it doesn't really matter. I think I can coach an All-American, McDonald's All-American, or draft pick, or I can coach a blue-collar guy that might go NAIA. So I just think both on a court will push each other. So for me, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and your coaching staff, you guys gonna have a tough job because you guys have these players who have their last chance, so they're trying to go out every game and perform. But you guys are trying to form a team and try to form the best team possible to win. So how is it to juggle these players who are trying to showcase themselves, these college coaches, and win games and put out a competitive product every game?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question too, and I think a lot of the post-grad programs, especially the ones that are maybe just forming or maybe coaches that are young coaches, the majority of them, all they worry about is winning games. I think the way our style is and the way our program and our brand is development first and putting the student athletes in a position to win. And once you put the student athletes in a position to win, things work out by themselves. Right. So for us, it's not really about winning games, although we coach to win every game. It's not only mainly about winning games. It's all about developing them and making sure we hone in on that talent. So we for sure want to win games, but we just have to instill in all of our players that, hey, we've had players that get scholarships that average 8 points a game, not 20. And I think if everyone plays for one another, everyone will benefit from a scholarship at the end, and not just one player scoring 20 points and getting all the notoriety. I just think our culture is not set up that way. I think a player coming into our atmosphere and what we do is not a selfish player like that. So we just kind of make sure that pretty much everyone eat and everyone understands that they can make everyone else's better. And if you make the person on your left and the person on your right better, that in turn will get you a scholarship. So I think that mindset we try to instill is the greatest asset I think our program provides. Is if you do for your brother on the right, do for your brother on the left, that gets you a scholarship. And I think that is the most important thing about our culture.
Yeah, and I mean, you've had some things. I mean, like I say again, a lot of people don't know much about prep school ball, but I mean, like I said, we've already talked about some of the players that we coached against. I mean, Josh Jackson's another one, played NBA lottery pick, and like I said, DeAndre Ayton, like that. And but I mean, you consistently are successful. I mean, you had a year, and it sounds crazy, I think, to a lot of people, that your team played like 82 games, and you won 72 games out of 82 games, which is the best record in NBA history, with 72-10 of the Bulls, I believe, with Michael Jordan. And you won 72 games in a prep school season. I mean, how does that work, playing so many games and being so successful? And that's pretty good success.
That year was a difficult year. We played 82 games. I think that year was a little different because we had more players, I think, that year than we've ever had. I think we had maybe about 20 players that year. So we had to form a couple different teams to get everyone maximum opportunities to, showcase their talent. So that year we scheduled 80 some odd games to make sure each, individual, each student athlete played, I think, 40 games, I believe it was. It was like 40 or 45 games. Some played even more that year against higher competition to get their game film and to be marketed at a high rate. And I think that year was just a testament to our coaches and just our program that we played everybody. We made sure all of our student athletes had ample amounts of game film, and opportunity. And that's what we provide. And it was tough, tough on our coaches and not myself traveling a lot, but we made it work. And one thing I can honestly say is we've never, ever canceled a game. We've always showed up and we always played. So that's one thing about us and our coaches is we always are dependable, number one, and we can play anybody at any place, anytime.
Right. And now, I mean, that's crazy with, having that many games, but I mean, like I said, you're right about the exposure with that. It definitely helps get players exposed, and just getting a chance to travel across the country for some of these guys. Some even traveling out of state. People from California, they may have never traveled, anywhere, and now they're traveling, to Florida or, Virginia or whatever, all different places we played, and that's some of the teams we played. I mean, the prep schools like Prime Prep in Texas, which had some major athletes. You played Aspire Academy from Ohio, which is where LaMelo Ball went after he left Hills High School. I mean, IMG Academy. I mean, do you feel like a little extra rush playing these big name programs that everybody knows about and wanting to knock them off?
Yeah, for sure. We it's the biggest thing I think for our players too is obviously everyone wants to play big name programs too, and I think too it's a big time recruiting tool for us. If college coaches or recruiting athletes at Prime Prep or IMG or Finley, we want to play them to be on the same playing field, and we have game film of our players playing against the number one player and doing well and scoring this many points and things like that. So I think, yes, obviously when I some years ago, it was an important thing to play against the highest schools or highest programs because we want to make sure that the coaches know our players can compete at that level too. So it was at the time, it was really, really, really important for that.
And one thing, you said this is where I can get a little bit my personal knowledge of you. I mean, you, we're a very entertaining coach to watch coach. I mean, just watching from the stands before I started working with you, and then watching firsthand, hearing some of the things you say. And I'm not going to go into some of the things because it's a family show, but you are always very fiery. I mean, very competitive, and of course you had a love-hate, probably more hate relationship with referees and stuff like that. I mean, describe, you always seem to be so passionate about what you're doing, and you really would get into referees sometimes. What was that all about? And, is that part of your brand?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's I guess my wife would probably say, it's a part of my brand. But I think for the most part is, like you said, I'm really, really, really competitive. And the number one thing is I want to make sure my players in my program have a fair shot at competing at whatever level. So that's why I'm so fiery. That's why I'm so passionate about, our progress. I think we worked so hard to get to a point that I just want to make sure all of our program and our student athletes have a clear path to success the same way or the same path of success as any other program will have. So I just think, number one, I'm just fiery, and I think I'm really competitive to a certain point. I think too there's some leeway and there are certain things that my personality is just really animated and competitive. So I do think that's a part of the success too is they know how fiery I am and how competitive I am, and hopefully that rubs off for some of the players.
I mean, I remember a particular game. I mean, you loved seeing your players compete and stand toe to toe against these higher competitions. But I remember there was a game that you were coaching against a team called Middlebrooks Academy, which is here in Los Angeles. Well, they're one of the more successful prep programs besides Future College Prep, and they had a kid on that team who was going to, I think, University of California, Cal Berkeley, and about 6'7", 6'8" kid, real tough kid. And we had a kid on, you had a kid on Future College Prep who was maybe 6'2", 6'2.5", guard, but very athletic. And he got the ball on the wing. And it was a key point in the game. And he starts driving, and you actually yelled out, "Dunk on him." And he went up and dunked in the 6'8" guy's face. And I mean, you're just like, I just saw like the smile come across your face, like, that's what I would love to have done. That's what I would have done, and this kid did it for you. I mean, those little competitive things that come out like that. I mean, what was that like for you to see that kind of play happen?
Well, obviously, I remember that play vividly. That was one of my players, Frank Bartley from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, that signed with BYU. Yeah, I think we have what I try to do is I try to create this relationship with our players that they understand what I mean when I say it. And sometimes it's turn right one play and then turn left the other play, and it's confusing. But they have to be able to react on their toes and kind of at the spur of the moment do specific things. So. I think he reacted well to that gesture, and he really let him have it.
Yeah, no, that's always special. And I mean, your coaching philosophy you talked about, but like, what are some things like if I was, I mean, I know I'm much older now. Besides, still maybe in the age, but besides, now a freshman in college, and if Masai wanted to say, "Oh yeah, I wanted to go to prep school and play," what would be the things that you would say that players need to hear, what they need to really focus on, and even in high school, what they need to focus on in order to maybe get recruited? What are some keys to getting recruited?
Well, number one is I personally think you have to go to a pretty decent high school. I think there's a lot of high schools now, especially in California, that the number one goal obviously is to win. And they're more concerned on trying to win than to developing the kids and getting them to the next level. And obviously, within a high school team, you might only have one, at the most, two players that might continue their career at any level after high school. So I just think the focus should be, number one, you have to go to a good school that values getting to the next level. I think to just play at your local high school now is not the way to go. I think you need to get in the atmosphere and go to a program that is an athletic program, if that's what you want to do. If that's what you want to play college ball. But if you want to play college ball, you have to go to a high school that pretty much majors in basketball. So that puts you in an atmosphere of development, and you can kind of see the different levels of expectations that you need to go after. So my recommendation for student athletes now is you have to be in the gym day and night. You have to, work on your craft. Don't work on 10 things. Work on one or two things and do them very, very, very well. And just have a hunger. Have a hunger of, I have to do well and make my teammates well to get to the next level. And just, you have to eat, sleep, and breathe development. You have to watch college basketball games. You have to go to college practices. A lot of players go and get individual trainers to be better. I think right now you have to figure out a way to gain that 1 or 2 inches over the other person. And I think the players that gain that 1 or 2 inches over the other players are always the ones that are a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say I failed step one. Just have to put that out there. But I really like what you said because a lot of players, not even say for myself, when I played, didn't value the work that you have to put in. You can't just go to the gym twice, 3 or 4 times a week for 2 hours and say that's it. You have to be in all day, doing multiple things, working out, making sure your body's correct, you're eating correct. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do in order to advance yourself and get yourself to the next level. So that everything you said was on point. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do if in order for you to get to where you want to go, if you're trying to get there.
Yeah, and a lot of players get to a certain point, they get to A, B, and C, and then they just can't go no further. It's difficult. Right. I think when a lot of players find out how difficult it is to actually go to that next level, they get to a point where they just can't take it anymore. It's just too much. They rather, deal with the girls or chase the girls or, go to social media or do whatever other things that they do. They bypass the development and the grind part of getting to that part. And I think the players that understand that they have to get over that hump and then give a little bit more and then give a little bit more to gain that edge, because everyone's working hard. Everyone has individual trainers. Everyone goes to the gym. Everyone's waking up doing push-ups. Everyone's going to get extra shots in. Everyone's doing that. So the biggest thing is, how do you gain that extra 1 or 2 inches more than the next person to get a scholarship, especially if you haven't been recruited yet. And I think if a player figures that out, then they will be highly recruited.
Right. And one thing that I know you stress a lot is doing the little things well. I mean, like you said, you have 1 or 2 talents that you're really good at, scoring, facilitating as volleying under being a skilled point guard, and being a good defender, rebounder, whatever it is. But you talk about the little things a lot, the little details that are really important that a lot of players miss, and they can be the difference between a player. One, it can be the difference between winning a game and not winning a game, but also getting a scholarship and not getting a scholarship. They're going to do the little things. What about the little things that are important for a player to do?
Well, that's a good point too, Dave. And my whole career, especially playing career, was built on the little things. I got recruited from junior college to Division I by only doing 1 or 2 things. I remember going back after my playing days were done, and I asked the person that recruited me, Coach Bobby Castagna of UC Santa Barbara. I still got a great relationship with him now. I asked him, "What did you see in me as a kid, as a 18-year-old kid playing? What did you see in me? What did I do?" And he specifically told me, he said, "You know what? You're the only person in a summer league game that played balls out defense, and you show a toughness that can handle our level." So those 2 things was it took a talent, but it didn't really take a skill, if you know what I mean. And my talent was I played hard every possession, no matter if it was a summer league game or a real game. And I played with a toughness and a maturity that a lot of players don't play with. They're more on Cadillac mode, So he said those 2 things was different. I added a little bit more inches than anybody else that they were recruiting. And that had nothing to do with points scored. And I scored, 10, 11 points. It had nothing to do with assists. I had my assists. But those 2 little things stood out with him that made him offer me a scholarship on the spot. And I think that's something that I always take in to my players. And that's how I coach. I coach to have them put in 1 or 2 things that other players just don't possess. And that, I think that's how you gain those inches to get a scholarship, is do something a little bit more or a little bit different from other players that can put you over the top.
I think one thing you do with the program that's really well is you created some special experiences. Like, I know a couple of years of the prep program, and even in your high school, you did a overnight camping trip to an area out of Malibu, it's like a state park, and got to see nature, but it's also sort of a bonding experience. And those little things, I think that not all programs do. You're taking kids to the college games, major college games, UCLA, Cal State Northridge, USC games. I mean, all those things that you were able to put as part of your program, I think enhanced it. And I mean, how important do you think is those little things in building a prep program?
Well, yeah, that's one of the biggest parts of our program is the other things. I think they, especially going to college games, they have to see different levels. So we will go to a UCLA game and we'll go to a NAIA game. So they have to see different levels to understand, number one, the level that they can compete at and the different type of levels that they're striving for. So, and also we go to practices. We go see how other teams at the a Division I or a small Division I will see their practices and what they do at practice. That's not that different from what we do. So I want them to know that we're running a college program, and so I think that's the number one reason why we built our culture. I think that's a part of we call it the program. That's what we do is we go on camping trips and we try to do little things for them that put them in an atmosphere of trust. They have to trust us before they buy into what we're saying. So they just have to know that we're here for them, and just creating that atmosphere and that culture of a real team, a real family. Is I think that gets the most out of players is if they feel comfortable and they know that the coaches are for them instead of just coaching them.
Right. Now let's switch gears right now. I mean, I know you're a basketball fan. You've always been, into basketball since high school at least. I mean, and here in Los Angeles, we've had a pretty good run the last couple of years with the Lakers and the Clippers both, and even this year in college. I mean, well, even last year. I mean, it wasn't for the pandemic. I mean, we had UCLA and USC looking to make a run last year, and then this year they both made a run this year. Having the USC go to the Elite Eight and UCLA going to the Final Four, and that was sort of unexpected. I mean, what is that like, seeing that in your hometown, seeing your Los Angeles-based colleges and professional teams doing so well?
It was exciting. I think for me, I got a relationship with the USC program. I know the coaches there, so it was really a fun. And I was more of a fan. I was definitely rooting for them in the tournament, and even UCLA. I was rooting for all the hometown teams to really do well. And once they start doing well, I think I started watching more, and I started, putting notifications on my phone saying, "Oh, UCLA is playing tomorrow morning at noon. I got to watch it." So I think it creates a real fun buzz, especially in me, because obviously a basketball fan first, and wanting the hometown teams to do well. So, I can watch them and cheer them on. So I think I'm more of a fan first. And that's how I learned, by being a fan and learning the different styles of play and just watching the hometown teams do well, especially the Lakers and Clippers too. I like the Lakers. I like the Clippers too. So I'm pretty more of a fan and watching both teams and kind of seeing how they're going to pan out, especially the playoffs will start next week. So I think that's going to be a fun battle in NBA. And then next year, both UCLA and USC will be, I would say, top 25. So it's going to be a fun next, 2 years to see how all the LA teams, college and pro, do. So I can be a fan.
Yeah, Coach. Playoffs start in NBA next week. Playing tournament this week. How do you see the Lakers and the Clippers standing right now in the playoffs?
Oh well, I think the Clippers have nothing to worry about. I think they'll probably tie up seed 3 or 4 or something, pretty high. But the expectations are high. I think a lot of pressure is on them to win, and I think because they're in the 3rd or 4th seed, they'll have to play teams that are really, really, really hungry, and they have the monkey on their back. They have the pressure. They have to win, or I think that team might be broken up if not. So I think the pressure. But I think the addition of Rondo will at least help them navigate some of those tough times that they have chemistry-wise. So I think Rondo really makes them a way better playoff team and possibly a favorite now to win it going into the playoffs because of his leadership. I think the Lakers, hopefully they don't have chemistry issues because obviously half the year Bron and AD and Shooter's been out. So I think they have a different team, but so scary when they get to the playoffs with 7-game or, well, obviously the play-in game, they have to win. But if they ever get to the actual playoff rounds of 7, very difficult to beat them where they have, some shooters now. They have the experience of going, and they have LeBron and AD. So I just think in a 7-game series, it'll be very difficult to beat them especially if they stay healthy and they get their chemistry. But I think it's going to be so super exciting to watch both of these two teams play. And for me, any team, either the Clippers or Lakers, if they win, I will be excited for LA.
Now, you were talking about, how Lakers are a scary team to watch or play. It'd be a scary team to match up against. And Masai and I were talking about last night, just getting ready for the show. We always like a pre-show, chat about things. And Masai and I were talking about, some of these teams that may be tanking a little bit purposely to avoid the Lakers. Like I think he said that, a couple of teams last night didn't play some of their starters purposely. I think the Clippers didn't play hardly anybody of their starters last night, and they lost to Houston, who's one of the worst teams in the league, in order to try to get out of the bracket where the Lakers are going to be in, so they don't have to face the Lakers until maybe the finals. I mean, do you think that's really a thing that teams do, and how do you feel about that, being a competitor like you are?
Oh yeah, I for sure think it's I guess they will call it gamesmanship because that's what they will call it. I will call it. I guess if I was in the NBA or at that level, I would call it gamesmanship too, because the whole goal at that level when you get to the playoffs is to win games. You have to win series, and I think if you do whatever you do to put yourselves in a better position for more favorable matchups, you have to do it at that level. So I for sure think teams tank games to play specific teams. I for sure believe that. Now they might call it, sitting out a player because he has a thumb soreness or, a toenail injury, but but that's exactly what they do. They hold players out for 2 or 3 games or 2 or 3 weeks to get a favorable matchup. So for me, at the level I'm at, I think that's unheard of, and I would never do that. But at that level, it's all about healthy. And if LeBron is, coming off an ankle sprain or AD has been banged up for a while, I think that might be smart to kind of hold them out, especially if you already know you're in the playoffs. If you're in the playoffs, whether you're seed 1, 2, 3, or 4, I think you have to go through the teams anyway. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think the biggest things are those play-in games, because those play-in games are, you have one game to do well. You don't have a 7-game series. So if the Lakers have a bad shooting game, they can see themselves out in the play-in games. So, right. So I think that they dug themselves a hole by getting, having to do the play-in games. But hey, UCLA went from the first 4 to the final 4. The Lakers can probably do it too.
Yeah. Well, I was telling Dave last night is, you don't get extra credit points for going through the most difficult path through the playoffs. Like, if I have the option of playing Portland in the first round or the Lakers in the first round, and I can finagle my way a little bit, I'm gonna try to get Portland in the first round.
Yeah.
Because it's just matchups, and I would rather get out the first round and go to the second and third round than lose in the first round. But switching gears a little bit to the other side of the NBA, the Eastern Conference, the Nets, they have KD, Kyrie, and James Harden, but they've only played 7 games all year as we head into the playoffs. Do you think that could be an issue in the playoffs when they play a Milwaukee or Philadelphia, that they don't have that chemistry yet?
I do. I think the Eastern Conference is going to be so exciting to watch this year, because the expectations is the Brooklyn Nets is going to run through everyone. And I just think that is not going to happen. I think Philadelphia has something to say about it. I even think Miami is going to have something to say about it because they know how to grind those games out in a 7-game series. They have the type of grinders that it would take to do well in 7-game series. So I think don't count Miami out yet. They're the defending Eastern Conference champions. They know how to get there.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, does Brooklyn have that talent though? It's every person that touched that ball can score 30 for Brooklyn. So that's the scariest thing about Brooklyn is their talent level. And if they ever get hot, I think they can literally sweep every single round of every playoffs to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, definitely. And now another thing. I mean, just the NBA game has changed so much. I mean, the addition of all the. I mean, when you and I were growing up, Coach Bean. I mean, there wasn't really much in the way of international players, and all of a sudden they started coming on scene. I mean, one of the first guys that you've heard about was Drazen Petrovic. Unfortunately, rest in peace. But and of course Tony Kukoc with the Bulls, and there's a few guys, and all of a sudden there's starting to be more and more. I mean, you've got Dirk Nowitzki, and now you have Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I mean, you have Luka Doncic, and of course the big guy in Denver who got the Clippers packing last year, Jokic. And so you got a lot of these international guys who are really, it's the game's changed. And I mean, what are your thoughts about just adding all the international flavors to the game? I mean, you played overseas, you saw the different mentality over there. What's it been like?
Dave, how I can put it, Dave, is you take your favorite dinner, but you don't put any type of hot sauce or any type of seasoning on it. I think the international players add the flavor to the food, add the flavor to the dinner. I think when you eating your dinner, you have your your course meals, but it's flavorless. I think the international players add a flavor to the NBA that's magnificent. I think it's completely different. It's unique and it's fun to watch. I think with the athleticism and the skill of U.S. players paired with that skill and the talent and the size and the uniqueness of international players, just make the game fun to watch and make it non-predictable. I think if you have an NBA of all athletes and all, some shooters, you'll be watching college basketball every day. You know what I mean? You'll just be watching, players trying to dunk and players trying to shoot threes. But the international players I think it adds that flavor to it that, how many times are you ever going to see a player like Antetokounmpo? You won't. 7 foot that gets the ball at the top of the key and goes one-on-one. That's unheard of. Luka Doncic at his size, when I played, we will be for him to get on the block, go post up,
Mm-hmm.
And Jokic, he gets the ball in the post and passes it. He's one of the best passers. So those things are so unique. It adds a different flavor to the game that I believe that's completely fun to watch. You already know how I feel about international players, the right international players. I just think it's a brand of basketball that I consider actual basketball instead of athleticism. You're just watching athletes, because they're showing skill, they're showing uniqueness, and they're showing a different love for the game and a different love for their skill level. So I think it adds that extra hot sauce and seasoning salt to your dinner, Dave.
Yeah, and what do you think the difference is? I mean, you played overseas. What is the difference in the international game and how? International players when they come over here, they have to adjust to the American game. But you as a player who played in America, growing up and playing in the college scene out here, and had to go over to international. What is the difference in the style of play over there, and what are the biggest nuances you see that between the two leagues? Playing overseas, playing.
Obviously, it varies depending on what countries you play at. Obviously, everyone's know about the European game is probably the most skillful and most highly recognized players or the European players because their skill level is, you can be 6'9" or 7 foot. And you can put it on the ground and shoot it. The majority where I played is in South America, where it's more hard nosed, grinded out, regular sized Joes playing, and you have to have skill and toughness to survive over there. So I just think the biggest difference in international style and U.S. style is, number one, the maturity. I think a lot of the international players have been playing at a high level since they were probably like 12 or 13, since they were small. I think here in the U.S. they break it up for AAU, and you're playing your age range. You're 13 and under, you're 14 and under, you're 15 and under. You're playing pretty much against your same age group until you get to your the high school level, and obviously all high school plays together. But over there, you can have a 14-year-old national player, that's playing on the national team at 14 and been playing at that level for 9 years or 8 years or something like that. So I think the level of maturity and the opportunity to play at a higher level against higher competition over there at a younger age is probably the biggest difference. And obviously they focus on skill more than athleticism as a way of progressing and having a long career here or there. So I think the focus on the skill other than the athleticism or the speed and the ability to play at a higher level younger are the two biggest things.
Yeah, I think Luka on the Dallas Mavericks, that's a prime example of what you just talked about. Started young at 15, 16, focused on. So you see when he plays, he's not really moving that fast or jumping around like that, but he can get to his spot. He can score from anywhere on the floor. So just like what you said, they focus on that skill over athleticism.
Right. Yeah, and you can see, you look at Luka's game, and there's no way in the world you can determine, he's just started playing basketball at 17. No. He's been playing basketball at that level since probably 12.
Right.
And vice versa out here, you can have a kid that's so athletic and so much talent, and then you can say, and his coaches say, he's only been playing basketball for 2 years because he's been playing football. So that's the difference in the level of activity. Over there, it's a way of life. They've been playing basketball for 12 since they were 12 or 13. That's just their way of life.
Right. Now, we're gonna have to close this out pretty soon, but I want to get a prediction from Coach Bean on NBA playoffs. Which are coming up. Who's going to make the NBA finals and who's going to win it all, and why?
Okay, so I'd never underestimate the heart of a champion.
Mm-hmm.
You can just never do it. And I think they have something there that's still there. But I do think the Clippers are just so good now with Rondo that they're going to probably make it with past the first one or two rounds because of pure talent, and they just have the leadership now. But I still don't trust that they have their go-to chemistry down the stretch when they need it. Obviously, they can get a ball to Kyrie. He can score at will. Paul George is a monster, and obviously he gets a lot of flack by not coming up big in the clutch. But I just think this year they have a lot of talent. But for me, I'm going to still go with the heart of a champion. I think the Lakers will come out the West and get to the NBA Finals. It's going to be tough, though. And obviously, they have to stay healthy. So I would say the Lakers there, and then the Clippers is 1B. I'm sorry, 1A. The Lakers 1, and then the Clippers 1A. And I still think the Nets will play either Miami or Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference Final to go. I just think the Nets have way too much talent. I just think it'll be hard to think that with all that talent, one or two players will not do well in the playoffs. They're just too good. So I think we'll have a Nets Lakers finals with my contingency being the Nets Clippers. And I honestly believe that this year, if the Lakers go to the finals, they will win it. If the Lakers go, I think if the Clippers go to the finals, they will lose to the Nets.
Masai. I don't know.
Well,
you shot through the heart there.
Well, I'll say this, since I am a long-suffering Clippers fan, and all I've asked for the last 10 years was the Western Conference Finals appearance. That's all I've been asking for. If we get there, I'll be fine with losing to the Nets in the finals. It wouldn't bother me. But anything short of the Western Conference Finals will be a failure, and they already changed coaches, and so if same roster with Rondo, they still can't get there. I think you got to look at the players this time. But I mean, you can't underestimate a champion. And even though there's a lot of question marks with the Lakers on how are they going to fit together since they really haven't played with each other, they're the last thing we saw that was. Well, let me say it like this: last year in the bubble was such a crazy time, and they were able to stick out like 3 or 4 months down in Florida and persevere and fight all the way to the end and beat the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. That's something that's never been done before. None of their finals was like that before. It was something special that the Lakers did, and so I can see why people will choose the Lakers again because they won it last year in such a special way. But I think the Clippers can give it to them. I really do. I'm biased. I'm not going to lie. I am very biased, but I think we can give it to them. But I think me and Dave next Saturday, the playoffs the picture will be set, and we're going to go through every series and we can predict all of them. I'm going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be fun. I sort of got myself out of NBA for a few years where I wasn't really paying much attention, possibly because the Lakers were not really good. I've grown up being a Laker fan, and Clippers were a team that kept me at least somewhat interested because they always had that chance, but they seemed like they always had that choke mode, in full effect in one round. The Houston series, and of course last year against Denver. I mean, they always seem to have that happen. But I think that this year might be that year, and I love the Lakers, but I think it might be that year. The Clippers are finally going to make that jump, and I think, all of us agree that, playoff Rondo, Rajon Rondo, he's been there, and I think honestly, I don't know if the Lakers would have. I think the Lakers could have still won last year without Rondo, but it would have been really a difficult path. I think he really was that X factor last year, and I think he's going to be that one piece the Clippers are missing from the last couple of years. Is they have this guy who knows how to win. He's got that bulldog mentality. And he just finds a way, like you said, Coach Bean, he does it by any means necessary. Rondo will find a way to help his team win. And I think that's what he's going to do for Clippers this year. And he's going to get them to the finals. And I don't know who's going to come out of the East. I think the Nets may take a fall. I think that might be a surprise team, like maybe Philadelphia. They're not that much of a surprise because they're, the top in the East right now. But they're still a team that a lot of people are not really taking seriously. In Milwaukee and the Heat, all these teams. I think it's going to be somebody else coming out of the East to play the Clippers, and the Clippers are going to have to, adjust to whoever it is. And I think that this might be that year that we actually see a new banner hanging up at Staples Center that's blue and red instead of purple and gold. So,
and you might be right, Dave. Especially even the other teams in the West have injuries. So Denver has a key injury that keeping their best player out. So Denver is pretty much going to be not as competitive as you would think. I think their point guard is out for the year with a tore ACL, I believe, or something like that. Jamal Murray, and he was big time he put the dagger in the Clippers last year. So there's a couple people that the Clippers, there's a couple teams that the Clippers will escape. Is that Denver, hopefully, but I think Portland can give Clippers fits. And I think Utah is a sleeper. I think if you sleeping on Utah this year, something's wrong. So I think the West is going to be stacked, and I think the majority of those teams are going to go 7.
Well, we're going to see. I mean, like I said, we got a couple more days to figure out. If the Lakers are going to be in the playing game or not in the playing game, and who they're going to play and whatnot. But I definitely think if the Lakers can get it rolling, things can happen. Because they still are the defending champions until they're not. Until someone actually knocks them out. That may be soon. They could end up getting knocked down in the play-in game. Losing to if they play the Warriors, and then they would have to play the winner of the 9-10 game, the Spurs and the Grizzlies. And while I don't think those teams could beat the Lakers in a one-game, scenario, but one-game scenario is dangerous. you start off bad, all of a sudden you start feeling that pressure, and even LeBron, as much as he's been through pressure, it's still they start really, it might get in their head a little bit, and you never know what could happen. But I don't see the Lakers losing in the play-in. I see them making it to the real first round, and that team, where it's going to be, whether it be the Phoenix Suns or the Denver Nuggets or the Utah Jazz that have to play, I would not want to be one of those teams that going to get ready for the Lakers. And then from there, we'll see what happens. But it's going to be fun. I mean,
and I'm actually rooting for the Clippers because I want them to do well. It's like it's been too long. They've been known as choke artists, and last year was a really bad year for them. I don't want them to break up the team after this year if they don't win. So I'm actually really rooting for them because I think they have the talent, and I think they have what it takes now to make a deep run in the playoffs. Now, obviously, it takes a chemistry in the playoffs to make a deep run. And I think by adding Rondo and a couple other players that they did, they have a really good shot. So I'm actually going to be rooting for them this year to come out and do well.
Yeah.
Well, Clipper Nation really appreciate that we have an extra person that's cheering for us and hoping that we do well in the playoffs. There's not many of us out there, so we'll take all the support that we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens in the next few days to see who plays who, and then from there, next weekend we'll be starting off the actual first round, and we'll see. I mean, it's gonna be fun. I mean, and we'll see what happens. And so anyway, well, this has been a fun show. It's great to have. Oh, hold on. Go ahead, beside.
I would like to do a special shout today. It's the Hall of Fame ceremony. Kobe is being inducted into the Hall of Fame 12:30. So shout out to him and the voice of the NBA for a very long time. Marv Albert announced that he'll be retiring at the end of this year's playoffs. So shout out to two legends in the NBA world.
And
that's it.
And real quick, I mean, Masai brought up a good point. I mean, you and I both grew up, in the Magic Johnson era and here in Los Angeles. But then, when we were a little bit older, just post college and over that, we saw a special player in Kobe Bryant. And I mean, what did Kobe Bryant mean to LA basketball and this basketball in general, in your opinion? And now he's being recognized, unfortunately, in death, but he's getting immortalized as a Hall of Famer. What do you think that meant for the LA basketball community and the LA basketball in general, having a player so iconic as Kobe Bryant? Coach Bean?
Oh, okay. Well, it meant he meant everything to the Lakers. I think he was LA and he was Laker, and I think he was known all across the world as the iconic, pretty much godfather, especially to today's youth and today's basketball player, like Michael Jordan was to us when we were growing up. I think he was an ambassador of the game. He did things off the court that will last forever. So I think he's something that he's a player that will always be remembered. I will always remember him as one of my favorite players of all time, favorite people of all time, and what he did for LA, bringing people in the community together to cheer. So completely highly missed, but he's getting honored and inducted today, and I think I will be sitting there watching him probably with tears in my eyes because he's not here to accept it. But he will always have a part of my heart every time I step on the court in basketball, thinking of the Mamba mentality, the Kobe mentality. So he left a legacy that will obviously be in everyone's heart and the game of basketball forever. So a tragic loss, but even in his death, he will still be remembered forever of what he contributed to basketball and what he has instilled in a lot of people's life. So yeah, he meant the world to basketball and certain people.
And he had that work ethic that you talked about, that grind. I mean, he was always staying up at 4 o'clock in the morning and going shooting shots and working on his game in the summertime. One of the coaches that you and I both know, UC Irvine, we had him on our show, months back, Ryan Battatelli. actually worked with him in the summertime, and he said that sometimes we get to go to France or Italy or somewhere overseas with Kobe, and the purpose of it, Kobe was doing business over there for his brand, but he would also want to get to the gym and work out, even when he was on, overseas like that. And he took, Ryan over there to be someone who would work out with him and, put him through some different training so he would not lose anything by being out of on the road like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's something that you don't see, that kind of work ethic all the time in NBA players or anybody. And I mean that was one thing that Kobe was just like an amazing work ethic that you may not see again for a while.
Right. Yeah, for sure. He possessed a work ethic that's a once in a generation type work ethic and mindset. And when you put a mindset and a work ethic together with a drive to be the best, his whole thing was, I needed to be up there with Michael Jordan. I needed to be up there with Wilt. I needed to be known as one of the top, not 10, top 1 to 3 basketball players of all time. How do I do it? And he had a mentality and a work ethic that drove him to becoming that. And obviously his brand is amazing. And he kept his, his brand will continue to be amazing. So I'm just so grateful that I had an opportunity to follow his career, see his career, and kind of emulate a lot of things that he's done.
Yeah, and for me, being that I was a Laker fan since day one. I mean, since I first started getting into basketball. So I came in with the Magic Johnson era, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy, all that group that won the 5 championships and stuff. But living out in Florida, I didn't get a very chance to see them ever live. I mean, I never got to see that team play live. I wish I would have. I mean, I saw them on TV plenty of times, but not in person. But, when I moved out to California, I moved out here in Kobe's 3rd or 4th year, and it was actually the championship year, the first championship they won with Shaq and against the Sixers, and I was sorry, against the Pacers that year. And I started going to some games and seeing Kobe play, and I saw him play throughout his career and develop and everything else. But a game I'm never going to forget was one that it's been talked about as one of his best games he ever had. I mean, 81 points aside.
Mm-hmm.
Was against Toronto. It was right before he hurt his Achilles. They were trying to fight for a playoff spot, and they played against Toronto. And I got lucky to go to the game with one of our future college prep players, Matthew Taylor. I had promised him if he got a scholarship, obviously somehow I'd get Laker tickets so he could see Kobe play. And the first 3.5 quarters was just like Lakers weren't playing well and they were struggling and they were like they were going to lose. And all of a sudden it became Kobe time at the end, and he started hitting shot after shot after shot. And in the final 2 minutes, he hit 3 3-pointers, including one while falling out of bounds with 5 seconds to go to send the game to overtime. And the electricity in that building. I went to some NBA finals. I would have a hard time to say the electricity in that building that night was not as good, if not better, than any NBA final. And in overtime, he hit a couple more threes, and then he did something that he didn't do much in his later career. He drove the lane in a tie game, about 20 seconds to go, drove the lane and split the defense and dunked over 2 people and gave the Lakers the lead, and they ended up winning the game. And I mean, the Kobe chants, Kobe, Kobe, I mean, were just deafening. He ended up having I think 44 points. I think 24 of those points were in fourth quarter and overtime.
Mm-hmm.
And that game that was one of those games that's you don't forget. And I've seen many great performances, but that will be one that will be etched in my mind forever, and that I will hold any NBA player, LeBron, AD, Steph Curry. I will hold them to that type of performance because that was something special.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you so much for coming on, Coach. I mean, really enjoyed. How can people find out more about your high school players out there, thinking that they might want that last shot, that last chance, to maybe make a difference in their basketball playing career and maybe get a chance to go to college? How do they find out about future college prep? Where can they go to find you? And
well, the biggest place is just to learn a lot of information about our program, just some basic general information about who we are, what we do, some of our alumni, some of our coaches, is to go to futurecollegeprep.com. They have you can apply there if you want to get evaluated, but just pretty much learn some basic information about our program. I think also too is you can always go to our website and send me an email. And if you have way more questions about the program and what we can provide, you can always email me and I'll respond back to you and kind of discuss the program in more details. But to start, futurecollegeprep.com is the best site to go to get started. And
now social media, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, so we're on Instagram, Future College Prep. That's always a big thing for especially younger kids. And on Twitter, we're at Let's Go FCP. So Twitter at Let's Go FCP and Instagram at Future College Prep.
Okay. Well, thank you, Coach Bean, and so we really appreciate you coming on, and we'll see what happens with your playoff predictions. Masai is hoping that it's not going to happen, and like I said, I mean, it's good banter. I mean, the biggest thing I want to see in the playoffs, I want to see a Lakers-Clippers matchup. Yeah. I really want to see it. I'd rather see it in the Western Conference Finals, so I know that one of the teams from LA is going to go to the finals. If whoever wins is going to go, and whoever loses is not going to go, of course. But I don't want to see it like say they meet in the second round or first round, and one of the teams wins or the other because someone has to win, and then they go and get beat somewhere else down the road, before they get to the finals. I want to see it where it really, really means everything, which is the conference finals. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you very much for watching out there. We appreciate our Stables Media Network. You see down here at the bottom of our screen, West Coast Bias. We're powered by Stables Media Network and all the great people over there. Vasu Vati Party and Tony Russo and Ayla Bradham, and I mean all those people who are part of our network of podcasts. Thank you so much, and we hope you have a great week. You stay safe and be nice to each other. We're out.
Thank you.